Rosberg. This is the third of 3 street circuits for 2014. The first of them, round 1 of the championship in Australia, the second, the famous Monaco location. We look at those events as a guide. The first round was won by Nico Rosberg. Nico Rosberg, there he is on the screen. Nico this evening, he missed out by 7 thousandths of a second, converting time into distance, a little over 330 millimetres. Mercedes was the difference between their two drivers when they got to the control line to measure the lap. Both of them had stories to tell. Lewis, a lock up down a turn one, costing some time. A little bit too much understeer early in qualifying for Nico, which they slowly rectified, but in the end, tiny margin between fascinating qualifying.
That was the closest margin since 2010 in Hockenheim, when Sebastian Vettel beat Fernando Alonso by 2 thousandths of a second. So that was a real close one, as you say. Just about everybody is out on circuit, apart from Nico Rosberg and Fernando Alonso. It's interesting here to look at Nico Rosberg.
Everybody, he's my favourite. Sebastian Vettel's my favourite.
On the circuit in the next 5 minutes, because the pit lane will close at 7:45. So they've got a little bit of time still, but he is now the only driver still in the pits.
Kimi Raikkonen had some issues with Ferrari in the latter part of Q3 last evening as we go back inside the Mercedes garage.
Software issues is what the team said. And here comes Nico Rosberg pulling out of the garage now.
World champions on the grid this evening. Sebastian Vettel has 4 of those to his credit. Fernando Alonso with 2, Jenson Button, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Raikkonen with 1. Nico Rosberg now to pass the pit lane. 60 kilometres an hour is the pit lane speed limit. It's just a little over 400 metres in total. It's the longest in time duration of the year. It's about 23.5 seconds to transit the lane, plus the transit time to slow down the speed back up. Lauder on screen there at the moment, 3-time world champion, 1975, 77 and 84. Senior executive role at Mercedes. And what a turnaround it's been for them this year. The non-executive chairman of Mercedes-Benz, made a lot of changes to the personnel. They've invested an enormous amount of money, but they're seeing brilliant results.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly you could say that the building blocks were put in place quite some time before by the previous administration, if you like, by Ross Brawn, etc. But the current management, as it were, inherited that, and they're certainly doing a fantastic job, brilliant job with these Mercedes cars.
So Rosberg out there, reminder that the cars that made it through into Q3, final blast of qualifying to determine the top 10 on our grid this evening, did the super soft tyre and the tyres that they achieved the time in Q2 this race. This is turn 14, the end of Esplanade Drive. Mr. Eccleston on screen, President and Chief Executive of Formula One Management, talking there with Christian Horner on the left.
Bernie comes to the majority of races, but certainly not all, and it's always good to see him. He's a bit like a mayor of a small town, and you could say that Formula One is a small town, and he is the mayor. Knows all the citizens, always says hello to everybody.
Does he make sure they're paying their taxes? That's the big question. We've also got 3 rookies in the event this year. Marcus Ericsson, the Swede GP2 race winner, Japanese Formula 3 champion. He's had experience here in Singapore. You'll see him in the caterer this evening. Danny Kvyat from Russia, GP3 champion. Youngest driver in the field, 20 years of age, winner of a Formula BMW race here when Formula BMW was in support in 2010. And the Danish driver, Formula 3.5 champion, Kevin Magnussen, driving for the McLaren. He's inside the top 10. Let's go down and paddock with Louise.
Yeah, just been trying to follow up on what was the issue at Mercedes. We obviously saw Nico Rosberg being delayed getting out onto the track. My understanding is there was a software issue, so with the steering wheel.
They're all maxed out. First time we've seen turbocharged Formula One cars at Marina Bay. The Formula One first time since 1988. It's a dry ice source of what looks like smoke there at the moment. A little bit of work going on beneath the seat of Denny Kvyat's car.
It's interesting, normally this pre-race schedule is very, very preordained. It's almost minute by minute. This is what we do, this is what we do, this is what we do at such and such a time in each thing. So to see a little bit of disorganisation is very, very rare. Not necessarily that's saying that's what we're seeing at the moment, but because of the conditions here, I think extra things are being done on the cars, and perhaps that's throwing that schedule very slightly.
Well, they actually had the seat out of Kvyat's car, and the seat is fully formed and moulded around the driver, and it looked like they were working on the belts on the car, so perhaps there was a little bit of discomfort. There's Kamui Kobayashi, the Japanese driver who's driving for Caterham Renault. Missed one Grand Prix this year where German driver Andre Lotterer took his seat. Actually a great view of the front of the Caterham, and the shrouds around the brake rotors on that car to just capture and control turbulent air. Isn't that a wonderful view looking across the Esplanade Theatres, back across Esplanade, driver at Boulier on screen there for McLaren, running operations there now in 2014. And they found form this weekend. I think the track suited them a little more. They've brought aero upgrades to the circuit, and that's helped their cause.
Sergio Perez just getting ready to get into his car. And saying, sorry, that's not Sergio, Esteban Gutierrez.
Gutierrez was actually quite quick on several occasions so far this weekend. So there is the scene, all 22 cars representing 13 nationalities are starting now to get solidly into the countdown phase before the start of the Singapore Airlines Singapore Grand Prix. Wonderful shot of the city.
The McLaren, Daniel Kvyat, two newcomers for STR. Jenson Button and Jean-Eric Verne, the respective teammates on row 6. Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Gutierrez for Force India and Sauber on row 7. Then Sergio Perez and Romain Grosjean for Force India and Lotus. And then Adrian Sutil and Maldonado for Sauber and Lotus on row 9. Row 10 is Jules Bianchi and Kamui Kobayashi for Marussia and Caterham, and similarly for the same teams on row 11, Max Chilton and Marcus Ericsson.
Thank you, Bob. So that is our grid. So things to look out for. Well, the lap speed consistency on both tyre types has been very strong between Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton, Daniel Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa. For Williams, it was a big recovery after a very difficult Friday. Tyre temperature issues hampered them on Friday, but they made great ground yesterday. And at one point in the first run in Q3, Felipe Massa was actually the fastest man on the racetrack, former pole sitter here. Sebastian Vettel lost vital track time in free practice 2. Is that a factor for this evening? Will the dirty side of the racetrack play a role in the run to the first corner? It's 200 metres from the control line at the start of the race to the apex of turn 1, so it's a very short run down there, and then it's highly congested through 1, 2 and 3, and in years gone by we've seen a lot of contact on that particular portion of the racetrack. We've got 2 Mercedes, 2 Red Bulls, and then it'll be an interesting battle between the Ferrari and the Williams down to the first corner. That's the scene from the rear of the grid.
Those lights flashing, as you were saying, Neil, at the moment. And this is this is not a pre-prep round, it's actually going to take those tyre blankets away. Just they're still not happy. 15 seconds to go until they set off on the final lap. On pole, and of course the first 10 cars have to wear the tyres on which they qualify. In each case, that will be the super soft red tyre.
And nobody in the field has opted for anything other than the super soft. It's got issues. Like what we saw in the wheel before, I suspect he's in neutral at the moment, but he's unable to select a gear. So stranded on position 2, front row of the grid, Nico Rosberg, and that is a drama.
That was It's a big drama for Nico, and the Mercedes is just sitting there. They will push him into the pit lane, and then, even in their debut year, just an extraordinary situation to have such new cars and yet to be so reliable.